Welcome back for another deep dive. This time we're doing things a little differently. We're stepping into the world of a classic novel.
Oh, very nice. A timeless one.
You could say that. It's one that's known for its romance, its social satire, and, well, let's just say it involves a lot of misunderstandings and maybe some very opinionated characters.
Sounds intriguing. What's the source material for this deep dive?
Well, I'm not going to spoil the title just yet because I think it'll be fun to uncover the layers of this story organically. But let's just say it involves a family with several daughters, a meddling mother, and more than one case of love at first sight, or perhaps more accurately, love at first misunderstanding.
Intriguing. I'm already starting to get a sense of the dynamics at play, especially with those hints about a meddling mother and love at first misunderstanding. Sounds like we're in for some juicy social commentary.
Oh, absolutely. And the author doesn't shy away from poking fun at the social conventions of her time. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, why don't we start by setting the stage? Imagine a world where a good marriage could make or break your entire family's future. A world where a single dance with the wrong person could be social suicide.
I can already picture the pressure, the expectations. It must have been both exhilarating and utterly terrifying to navigate that social scene.
Exactly. And no one embodies that sense of urgency more than our dear Mrs. Bennet. This woman is on a mission to marry off her daughters. Every eligible bachelor who crosses her path sends her into a matchmaking frenzy.
Ah, yes, the quintessential matchmaking mama. We've all encountered that archetype in literature, haven't we? Always eager to secure a good match for their daughters.
Oh, she's the original. And she doesn't beat around the bush either. Remember when she first learns about Mr. Bingley's arrival? She practically faints from excitement.
How could I forget? A single man of large fortune, 4 or 5,000 a year. What a fine thing for our girls.
You can practically hear the wedding bells ringing in her ears. She's already planning the ceremony and they haven't even met the man.
It's almost comical, but when you think about the historical context, it takes on a whole new meaning. For women in that era, especially those without a brother to inherit the family estate, marriage wasn't just about romance. It was an economic necessity.
Right. A good marriage was their best chance at security, which makes Mrs. Bennet's almost obsessive focus on wealth, well, a little more understandable.
Precisely. But what makes the author so brilliant is how she contrasts Mrs. Bennet's ambitions with her daughter's actual talents, or lack thereof in some cases.
That's where the satire comes in. It's like she's holding up a mirror to the absurdity of it all.
Yeah.
Take, for instance, Mrs. Bennet's comment about Lydia's dancing. She practically insists Mr. Bingley will be smitten with her youngest at the ball, as if dancing skills were the ultimate measure of a young lady's worth.
And by extension, her marriage potential. It's through these seemingly lighthearted jabs that Austen subtly critiques the societal norms of her time, exposing the superficiality of equating a woman's value with her ability to attract a wealthy husband.
It's social commentary disguised as witty banter, and it's pure genius. But let's not forget the men in this intricate dance of courtship. Speaking of which, have you ever encountered a character quite like Mr. Collins?
Oh, Mr. Collins. He's a special case, isn't he? So fixated on his own self-importance and Lady Catherine de Bourgh's good graces that he's completely oblivious to the feelings of those around him.
His eagerness to secure a wife, any wife, is almost painful to witness. One minute he's set on Jane, praising her beauty, and the next he's shifted his affections to Elizabeth with an almost robotic efficiency.
It's as if he sees them as interchangeable parts in his grand plan for a respectable marriage rather than individuals with their own thoughts and feelings. And this speaks volumes about how some men, just like Mrs. Bennet, viewed marriage through this lens of social strategy rather than genuine affection.
So we've got Mrs. Bennet laser-focused on money and Mr. Collins seemingly indifferent to actual compatibility. It makes you wonder, where does love fit into all of this? And perhaps more importantly, what about a woman's right to choose?
That's the question at the heart of it all, isn't it? And you're right, we haven't even touched on the other half of this equation, the men. And when it comes to first impressions, no one is more intriguing than Mr. Darcy, wouldn't you say?
Oh, absolutely. Mr. Darcy, the man who enters the scene, shrouded in an almost ridiculous air of mystery. I mean, his initial description is so sparse it's almost comical.
It's true. He wore a blue coat and rode a black horse. That's it. That's all we get. It's as if the author is deliberately playing with us, daring us to form an opinion based on practically nothing.
And of course, opinions are formed, especially by a certain sharp-eyed Miss Elizabeth Bennet. But unlike that simple first impression, Hers is a bit more, shall we say, nuanced.
To put it mildly, proud, aloof, judgmental, those are just a few of the words that come to mind when she first encounters him. But what's fascinating is that both of these initial impressions, Darcy's and Elizabeth's, are based on incomplete information.
It highlights how easily we can misjudge based on appearances or fleeting moments. And it's not just Darcy. Think about how differently people perceive Mr. Bingley. Some, like his friend Mr. Hurst, see only his wealth and social standing. Others, like Elizabeth's dear friend Charlotte, value his agreeable nature and easy manners, even if they suspect a lack of depth.
And then there's Elizabeth, always the astute observer, who questions whether there's more to Mr. Bingley than meets the eye. She wonders if perhaps his agreeable nature masks a certain passivity or lack of discernment.
It's fascinating how even those who seem to admire him seem to be looking for something more, something genuine beneath the surface. But that seems to be a recurring theme with Austen's characters. They're always looking beneath the surface, aren't they? Peeling back the layers of social decorum to uncover the true nature of those around them.
It's what makes her work so timeless. And she achieves this brilliantly through her masterful use of dialogue. Those conversations aren't just there to fill the page. They're meticulously crafted to reveal character, to expose hidden motives and desires.
It's like eavesdropping on a fascinating social experiment. You see these characters navigating the complexities of societal expectations, all while trying to decipher the true intentions of those around them.
Precisely. And what they reveal often says more about themselves than they realize. Their words become windows into their values, their insecurities, their hopes and dreams. And sometimes those words come back to haunt them in the form of letters.
Oh, the letters. Talk about a literary device that never gets old. They're like ticking time bombs of truth just waiting to explode.
And Austen uses them masterfully, wouldn't you say? Take, for instance, Caroline Bingley's letter to Jane. On the surface, it's a perfectly polite note expressing regret at their separation and wishing her well.
But we, the astute readers, we see right through it, don't we? We recognize the subtle digs, the calculated attempts to distance Jane from her brother.
Exactly. And this highlights the significance of letters in that era. They weren't just casual forms of communication, they were carefully crafted documents that carried weight and consequence. And because they were often the only means of long-distance communication, they held a certain power.
They could make or break hearts, forge alliances, or shatter illusions. And Austen, being the literary genius that she is, uses this to create some of the most delicious dramatic irony.
Oh, that delicious tension that arises when we, the audience, know more than the characters on the page. We see the misunderstandings unfolding, the missed connections, the wrong assumptions being made, and we're left on the edge of our seats wondering when or if the truth will be revealed.
And perhaps the most dramatic example of this is Darcy's letter to Elizabeth. Talk about a game changer.
A true turning point in their relationship. Remember Elizabeth's initial disbelief, her struggle to reconcile the contents of that letter with her perception of the man who wrote it.
It's a pivotal moment that hinges on Elizabeth's willingness to be open to the possibility that she might be wrong, that her prejudices have blinded her to the truth. And this struggle to confront our own biases, to acknowledge our own capacity for misjudgment, that's something we can all relate to, wouldn't you say?
Absolutely. We all have those moments where we realize we haven't been seeing the whole picture, where our assumptions have clouded our judgment.
And it's in those moments of reckoning, those moments of self-reflection, that true growth and understanding can occur. And Austen captures that beautifully in Elizabeth's journey. But of course, no good drama is without its share of complications. And Austen, being a master storyteller, knows how to keep us hooked. And things are about to get a lot more complicated because we haven't even touched on Elizabeth's visit to Pemberley. It's more than just a sightseeing trip. You know, it's like this whole turning point for her. This is where she really starts to see Mr. Darcy differently.
You know, it's interesting you should say that because Austen uses the setting itself to kind of mirror Elizabeth's changing feelings. We go from that initial image of him, he wore a blue coat and rode a black horse, to this whole estate. It's like Pemberley embodies all these things about him. His caste, his family history, you know?
Right. It's almost like the house becomes this whole other character. Like it's revealing something about Darcy that words just couldn't capture. And then there's that scene with the housekeeper, Mrs. Reynolds. What a glowing recommendation she gives him.
I know. It's so telling what people who know him well say about him. I mean, she describes him as a kind and considerate master. She says she's never even heard a cross word from him.
Can you imagine? That's quite a contrast from Elizabeth's first impression, right? Suddenly she's starting to question everything she thought she knew about him.
And just as she's warming to the idea that maybe she misjudged him, they bump into each other at Pemberley.
Oh, I know. The tension in that scene is just palpable. Elizabeth is mortified. Darcy's caught off guard but trying to be polite. And poor Mrs. Gardner, she has no idea what's going on.
It's just classic Austen. She's such a master of using these awkward encounters to create both humor and this real sense of suspense. Like, we're in on the secret, right? We know the backstory, but the characters are stumbling through it in real time.
Exactly. And then, just when you think things might be looking up for them, Austen throws in another wrench. Lydia runs off with Wickham.
Talk about a scandal. This really highlights the double standards of the time. Lydia's reputation is shattered, her chances of a good marriage are gone, and her own mother seems more concerned with what the neighbors will think than with her daughter's well-being.
It's a stark reminder of just how limited women's options were back then. But then, just when all hope seems lost, Darcy steps in to save the day.
I know. Talk about an act of heroism. He could have just washed his hands of the whole mess. Let Wickham ruin Lydia's reputation and be done with it. But instead, he takes it upon himself to fix the situation. He makes sure they're married, even though it could ruin his own reputation.
It's such a powerful moment because it shows us who Darcy really is underneath it all. It's not about social pressure or pride anymore. It's about doing the right thing no matter the cost. And for Elizabeth, that's huge. It's like she finally sees him clearly for the first time.
And that paves the way for his second proposal, which is so different from the first. One is filled with this genuine humility and respect, and this time, Elizabeth says yes.
It's the culmination of their journey, isn't it? They've come so far, both individually and as a couple. They've had to confront their own prejudices, learn to communicate, and ultimately choose each other, despite all the obstacles.
It's a story about so much more than just romance, isn't it? It's about self-discovery, forgiveness, and the transformative power of love. And it's a story that continues to resonate with readers centuries later.
It really does. We've barely scratched the surface of this incredible book, but hopefully our deep dive has inspired you to rediscover it for yourself or pick it up for the first time. It's a classic for a reason. And until next time, happy reading.